One, and we are live for a new episode of the Electric Podcast. I'm Fred Lambert, your host, and I'm joined by Seth Wintraub, live from LA. How you doing, Seth?
I'm good.
All right, so you're in LA for the LA Auto Show, so we're gonna get into that in a second. But first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Electrify America for sponsoring this episode of the Electric Podcast. They have the largest public fast charging network in the US. We're gonna have a little bit more to say about them later on the show. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're gonna start with a quick report from the Elioto show and the news that came out this week. We had said there, as I just mentioned, we had Scooter there. We had even our good old Jamie Dow was there for the first day of the show. So we got quite a good look at it. Do you have any like general impression of the show so far?
Well, COVID's going a little crazy in Europe, and I think there's some trepidation in Asia still. You also have CES coming up in 2 months, so that kind of slowed down, I think, the amount of news coming out of here. Obviously, we're going to talk about Kia and Hyundai's
Mhm.
concept. I'm here largely for the Porsche stuff, which I'm really excited about, but can't tell you about right now. But we're going to have something next week, or I don't know what the time is, but it's going to be cool. Yes, announcement, which like if like typical fans, like we want to see where the Macan thing is coming. That's kind of the big news coming up from Porsche, and that's probably going to be at the end of next year. So we're looking for news on that. But the Taycan is still like an amazing vehicle, and they put a GTS model kind of between the 4S and the turbo. For those people who can't afford a turbo, but can the 4S is too small for them. So yeah, and I mean we're scrolling through the thing now. It's got that cool roof thing that you can see right there.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, there's still news popping out. Obviously, disappointed at GM and Chevy for not having a single EV or charging spot. I mean, even Stellantis had, their plug-in hybrids represented. They didn't have any Fiat 500Es. Usually, that they have one of those like, behind everything else, near the bathrooms. They didn't even have that this year. So and the Fiat 500e is actually been updated in Europe to something like pretty impressive. The one here is still running around town. They're being sold for like $5,000. So
City car.
yeah, nice city car. So anyway, not quite as big at the LA Auto Show this year as previous years, but still noteworthy nonetheless. Good to see some car people, uh, both from other publications and some of the brands. So that was good.
Yeah. So for what we can tell you right now about the GTS Taycan that they unveiled this week, like Seth said, we're gonna have a little bit more time with it soon, and we're gonna report more extensively on it. But it sits just below the turbo. Of course, the nice thing like is that they feel confident enough, basically, with the Taycan to give them the GTS moniker on it, which is of course has more impact in their gasoline versions of Porsche's lineup. It's the same powertrain in terms of the energy capacity. You have the top performance 93.4 kilowatt hour battery pack that you'll find in the Turbo and Turbo S version. You have the 800 volt architecture. It's good. They say for 213 miles of range, 504 kilometers, but that's on the WLTP standard. Um, it, car generally get a lot less on EPA, but Porsche has been known to kind of undershoot a little bit the EPA, and you can get more range out of it, depending on what you're driving, of course. So yeah, the main difference is you get a little bit less output out of the dual motor system. You still get a dual motor system, but the output is. Oh, I don't have it here. 590 horsepower instead of 670 that you'll find in the turbo. So
Yeah, so they took the rear motor of the turbo and the front motor of the
mm,
4S to get that combination.
yeah, and you get a few different design accents. We'll get a closer look to that, like I said,
Hmm.
next week. So a few other EV news that came out of the Electrify show. You have the Nissan that announced the kind of had the US launch for the Ariya, even though it's coming out next year. They released the price and all the different trims for the vehicle. It starts at $46,000 MSRP. Of course, Nissan has a dealership model, so final pricing is arranged with the dealerships. But the MSRP is 46,000. That's for a front wheel drive version with an 87 kilowatt hour battery pack. Well, actually, all version have an 87 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's your motors that changes, and the feature, the package. Like, so some trims are attached to a specific feature package, different wheels, different stuff like that, different accessories, interior accessories, as you can imagine. Uh, so the first three versions, the Venture Plus, the Evolve Plus, and the Premier, all have just a front wheel drive motor, and they each have a 238 horsepower on that. It's an AC synchronous motor. Then you have the all-wheel drive version that bumps you up to 389 horsepower, and this one starts at $59,000. So you have quite the bump in pricing here. Still an interesting offering, I think, is if you compare them to other crossovers in the segment, electric crossovers specifically, you can compare it like people were calling it a Model Y killer. Of course, that was always a bit ambitious. But to be fair, like Tesla in the US, they don't offer. Well, actually, with Tesla, that would be a rear-wheel drive version, but just a non-all-wheel drive version. So you get, if you are okay with that, with not all-wheel drive, you can get a much cheaper electric um, crossover here that still get up to 300 miles of range. So the other version, the Evolve Plus and the Premier, have the bigger wheels, I think, and so they get a little bit less range, up to 285, they say, and that goes to 265 for the all-wheel drive version. So you do get a 20 miles less range if you go with all-wheel drive.
Yeah, so the Aria is like, originally in 2020, we were actually like getting ready for the launch of that, and Nissan pushed it back almost 2 years. So, it's really like kind of a bummer because like I got into the car for the first time in a long time and I was like, oh, this is actually a really nice interior. The exterior, it feels like they had something really amazing and futuristic, and then they kind of dialed the prototypes back a couple times and melded it with the Leaf a little bit. So the exterior is still certainly better than the Leaf, I think, more exciting, but it's not as cool as the original. But the interior is amazing, and I was with some other EV guys, and they were all like, like, oh, this is actually a really good car inside. It feels great. There's tons of space in the back. I think more than a Mach-E or a Model Y. So, it might be a sleeper hit. Like, I mean, obviously, it would have been better if it came out, this year or last year, but it's ready to go. The other big thing is this is Nissan's first CCS combo charging thing, which basically put the nail in the coffin of CHAdeMO.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun, not fun. It's interesting to watch the PR folks at Nissan dance around the, like CHAdeMO is still viable for the Leaf, but we thought, whatever. And it's another dance that, Electrify America and EVgo are doing. EVgo is here with a Nissan saying, hey, we'll support all the Leaf owners for, X number of years. Whereas, Electrify America is like, yeah, we're not going to have CHAdeMO going forward. Even
Yeah.
Tesla's, will have a CCS combo in a few years or, a few months, whatever. So, the question is, what do Nissan Leaf drivers do? Like, as CHAdeMOs start disappearing in, 3 or 4 years, is there a conversion kit? Is there an adapter? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do they just do level 2, like, the old Roadsters? Like, kind of where do they sit? And, it's a question left unanswered right now.
Well,
I
I can answer
imagine.
it for you, I think.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, look at what the used market for the Nissan Leaf is right
Right.
now, and look at how the battery pack degradation hasn't been great due to Nissan's reticence to move to a thermal management system.
Right.
I think those. I'm not saying that the used Leaf are gonna become useless, but they're gonna be mostly like city cars, and the fast charging capability won't be as useful. And Nissan has already signaled that for new vehicles they're moving into CCS. So I think the CHAdeMO standards just gonna fall behind, and it's going to be something to take into account if you are a Leaf owner that plans to keep your car, or if you want to buy a used Leaf. Just know that well, it was never really a long distance like road trip car anyway.
Right. Right.
Now it's just becoming even less so with
But I mean, the 62 kilowatt Leaf that's being sold right now today,
yeah,
with a CHAdeMO, I'm like, that kind of sucks
yeah.
because that you already know that it's going to be
But
fewer
like
and
you
fewer
said,
visits
Nissan
to
is
production.
already doing this little dance of like, yeah, this is not a useless car. We're selling it with the whole standard here, but like anyone that's watching the market knows that's you shouldn't be putting a lot of money there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and with those pricing too, with the so those are U.S. pricing, and with the new incentive coming, I think they should be getting at least 7,500. It sounds like so for at least for a few years. In no, that's right. Is the no the area is going to be produced in Tennessee too with
Not at the beginning.
not at the beginning,
So
right?
eventually, though, it could be.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make it a big difference for them. But even then, I think the pricing is pretty good. So the any other, well, I mean, the area wasn't really unveiled at the Electric show, but other EV unveilings at the Electric show was the Kia and Hyundai both came out with full size SUV electric concept being the key word here. They these are the previews of what's coming in the Ioniq and the, well, I mean, Kia doesn't have really a sub brand for their electric vehicles, but the EV9, it sounds like it's going to be. The concept is already called the EV9, but I assume it's going to transfer to the production version. And those are concept E vehicle, I would say. Uh,
Very concept.
yeah, I mean, the Ioniq came close to what they unveiled. I don't remember that they had a number for the. Oh, the image is not loading for some reason.
Yeah, try scrolling around.
This is not the website's fault. This is my computer right now, like it's thinking. That's hanging by a thread sounds like.
It looks like there's
Yeah,
like a Pong game going on at the front of the.
the front.
See how that you have like the two Pong things, and you have the
Yeah, but I
whole
mean,
digital.
you have those headlight system. Well, I mean, not as extensive as you see here, but those pixelated headlights, you have that on the Ioniq too, on the tail lights too. I mean, look at the back here. Like it's not. I mean, it's interesting, like almost like jet-like with the way that um, the arch ends up on the back here. But it's not something that you would expect really on a production car. And
Yeah,
of
this
course,
this
the
is
big
not coming close to production.
yeah, the big giveaway, of course, the suicide doors. Like that's it rarely makes it to production. So I don't know what's happening inside those doors here, but
Yeah, it's like hollow, and there's like
eh,
lighting in there. Obviously, that wouldn't be safe for
yeah.
side impact or anything. And there's no steering wheel or dashboard or anything. It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of just
it's a extremely concept like, but it should give you sort of an idea of what Ionic full size SUV that's should be coming soon. They call it the Concept 7, so I don't know if it's going to be the Ionic 7 probably. And Kia had their own thing. Like I previously said, the EV9, and this one is closer, I think, to what you'll find as the production version. But still, you see the oversized wheels that it looks really cool, but normally they don't release with that. Um, the back, you can see it's closer to something you'd find in production vehicle. Very sharp
yeah.
lines, a lot reminiscent of the EV6.
Hmm.
Of course, suicide doors. Like, is there even space for a battery pack in the bottom? Like, it looks
Oh, we
like it's
forgot.
3 inches thick there. I really like the lines, though. The lines are solid, in my opinion. You get those little yoke steering wheel right there.
Yeah,
Also, don't think it's gonna make it to production. Again, this is just an idea of what the production version is gonna look like, which you should see relatively soon.
yeah. I mean, it's a low bar, but at least Kia and Hyundai brought like electric concepts to the show.
An effort. Like
Yeah,
the bar is low if we get excited about concept vehicles, which we
right.
generally don't. Um, yeah, we already thought about the GM booth here. You guys weren't impressed by what they brought. After we posted this article, I did jump on a call with GM for something unrelated, something actually we're going to talk about in a second. But they did mention that they weren't happy about the article because they claimed that uh, the only EVs that they could have brought would have been the Bolt EV, the Chevy Bolt EV and the Chevy Bolt EUV. Uh, of course, as we argue in there, they were talking about 20 EVs by 2023. So you would think that in an auto show they would bring at least something more that's showing what they're gonna bring. But they said that the only thing that they would have brought would have been the EV and EUV, and they have restrictions right now because of the fire risk that they cannot park those vehicles inside. So they did this argument to me that even though they have solutions to get around that right now, they have the new battery pack that they are replacing in, but they're like, it would look bad if we bring a car for the show with these new battery pack when we haven't finished replacing them for current owners, which is not a bad point. But I don't
Nope.
think it's still justified the whole thing of having like zero EVs in that booth, even though they're claiming to go all electric
Yeah,
and
I mean,
whatnot.
bring a concept, bring like some, old Camaro that somebody converted, whatever.
Yeah,
Like a
yeah, that's a good point. That's a
Corvette.
good.
Bring Joe Biden's Corvette. Bring,
Yeah, at
whatever.
SEMA a few weeks ago,
Anything.
they had Chevy vehicles that had powertrains. Like just they were in Vegas, just
Yeah.
have those people bring them. I know that they are not always all owned by Chevy. Like some of those SEMA show cars are like owned by other people, but I mean, just give them a few $1,000 and move them
Yeah,
there
exactly.
for a
And
week or
and
two.
the Bolt, we talked about this earlier. If you can't bring a Bolt inside, just leave the battery. Just bring the Bolt. Like it doesn't need to be turned
Mhm.
on. Doesn't mean need to be like
That's
running.
good.
Like it's just sitting there.
That's a good point too. So what GM announced regarding the Bolt EV this morning is that they are going to push a new software update, and by push I mean you have to bring your car to the dealership and they're going to upload it to you. They don't have over the air update capacity on that car yet, but so if you remember with the whole recall of the battery packs over fire risk, which GM finally recognized in August of this year and started the recall program. But it takes times, of course, because up to recently, I think last uh, October or September, GM was still producing cars with what they believe was defective LG battery cells. So they had to start production of the good battery cells, and then they can start the recall program. So we're still, I mean, they don't have any estimates, but I assume it's still going to take months to get through that program. So in the meantime, they had this software update to mitigate the risk of fire, and on top of the update, they had some restrictions. So the update would limit your car's charging to 90% state of charge, and there was also a bottom gap where you wouldn't go below roughly 70 miles of range. So that would limit a lot of what you could use in your pack. And also, they would tell you not to charge your car overnight and not to leave them parked inside, of course, because if they do catch on fire, the impact would be much greater if it's inside a garage or whatever. And that was the recommendation from GM. But of course, a bunch of like parking garage owners and things like that were like, we don't even want those cars there. Like, keep them away from us. So what they did is that this new update changes the limitation to 80% instead of 90%. So you have 10% less off the top, but they let you use the whole 80%. So you can theoretically driving down to zero, though of course you never really want to be at zero, but near zero, let's say. So technically you can use more of the battery pack even with that 10% less at the top, 20% not accessible basically. And with that, so you get more range out of it technically, and you they remove the restriction of not parking inside. Now I don't know how that will translate to people actually following those restrictions. I know if I was a Bolt TV owner, I don't know if I would necessarily follow that. but GM seems confident that you won't have to. So they're removing that restriction of parking inside. The update is right now being rolled out to the 2019 Bolt EVs because GM said that they believe that the, there's a build windows in 2019 that is more at risk. But ultimately, the update is going to go to all Bolt EVs as they go through the recall program. So people are already being called to a dealership to get the battery modules replaced. But like I said, it's going to take a while. Another EV that was unveiled at the LA Auto Show was the Fisker Ocean SUV. So that's Fisker's latest, Henrik Fisker's latest electric vehicle startup. They've been teasing about. Well, we've already seen a bunch of prototype of the Ocean, but this is apparently the production version that's going to be produced next year, around this time next year by Magna out of Austria. I think the
Yep.
factory is based, and yeah, we didn't learn that much of the car. Like they didn't want to reveal like the range or much of the specs, but we do get a look at the latest prototype, which should be basically the production version. They did release the MSRP. They were talking about $35,000. Now they're talking about 37,500 before incentive. So this still would be under 30,000 after incentive, because yeah, you would still get the, well, we're gonna get into the incentive later on, but right now you should technically get 7,500 for it, even though it's produced in Europe. Yeah, I mean Fisker, we had we remain quite skeptical about the company's ability to deliver due to past performance, though past performance is not always an indication of future performance, but it gives you a good idea. They did release this kind of rough spec sheet here, with the sport version being the cheapest one, using LFP cells. They're talking about an estimated 250 miles of range, but they didn't say how big the battery pack will be. Then you have the Ultra and the Extreme slash ones, because the one's going to be a special first edition. I think they're planning like 5,000 of them. 350 miles of range, going to use the NMC cells technology. Yeah, so that's one of those things that I'm skeptical about, because I remember, like, I've been covering Fisker for a long time, and I do remember just like 2 years ago they were, are we gonna have solid state batteries, and that's what's gonna enable $35,000 Ocean with a range of over 300 miles, because we have this breakthrough solid state technology.
And they were also
And
going to use the MEB platform at some point, weren't they? The Volkswagen platform, I thought.
I knew there were talk about it. I don't think if there wasn't anything ever like officially announced. But we know that, I mean, engineering is not uh, historically hasn't been Fisker's like strong suit, like
Well,
the old one at least. So they've been looking to mitigate that with the new startup by finding like strong partners, and Volkswagen
well,
would have been
Magna's a
one,
strong partner.
and
That's a
Magna
good
certainly
pick.
is. Yeah,
I mean,
certainly is. But manufacturing mainly, like they're not necessarily like well, they
right.
do produce, they do have a powertrain division, and I'm sure they are intricately involved in the powertrain
Right.
on this vehicle. But yeah, I mean, the car might come to market, it might not. I don't know. We're gonna keep following them closely, but I remain skeptical on them.
Yeah, but I mean, so I'm also very skeptical for the same reasons. But if Fisker is going to succeed, um, putting taking the whole powertrain outside of the company to a established, I think Magna makes the Jaguar I-Pace. Like
Yeah,
they built EV, like big EVs before. They have a lot of experience in internal combustion in the past. So basically, Fisker designs the look of it, which I think you can agree. Like we like Fisker's designs. We've always liked his designs inside
I'm a
and out.
fan of several of his designs for sure, but they often have problems too. Like, I mean, the Fisker Karma was an insanely good looking sedan until you get inside. Then you get inside, and it
Right.
was, I mean, cramped up. Like, I mean, it was looked good, but it wasn't fun inside at all.
Right.
Do we have any pictures of the inside on this car? Did you guys get to sit inside? Because I just have
Uh,
exterior pictures on this
yeah,
post.
I I saw people sitting inside. I kind of just peeked inside. I didn't. I should have probably. But
So there
he
was
was
that.
out there. Like we were there for 2 days. He was. We saw him a number of occasions talking to analysts and different reporters. He was hustling. Henrik was. He was, selling this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a public company now. Like every
Right.
announcement has a lot of value. I just
Yeah.
there's
Just
a gold rush in electric vehicle on the
right.
public market right now, and some of them are legit, some of them are not. And I'm not saying that Fisker is not legit. I'm just saying that where's the value? That's what I'm looking
Hmm.
for. I'm looking for where's the value. So Magna is going to produce those cars. I'm not even sure that they're going to be able to reach that price target. Like, yes, like you said, it's a good company. They have experience building EVs, but they have experience building a $80,000, well, $70,000 SUV. Um, are they going to be able to reach a price point that Fisker is talking about? Are they going to be to reach the volume that they're talking about? Because of course, the I-Pace is also not a very high volume vehicle, and then Magna is the company to invest in at this point. It's not necessarily like Fisker, and so Fisker, what did they own? They own the ownership experience. They're talking about this flexi subscription service where they like for 280 a month, and like the everything is all in insurance and whatnot. Like uh, that might convince some people for sure, but then the experience is built around like what's the service center, like what's the buying experience, all that stuff, and we haven't seen much of that from Fisker yet. Not that's the hardest part of it. I think production is, but then again, the production, they don't even own that. So I just don't see the value offering in Fisker right now. That is strong suit was always design, and to be honest, like I was impressed with the prototype of the vehicle. I think it got toned down a lot with the production version that looks much cheaper to me uh, the the than the original concept that was very sharp looking.
Yeah.
Um,
It's clear that they decided like, hey, we're gonna go for a good price.
yeah, and it is. It's not a bad price, but and I'm sure some people gonna. And you know what? What's crazy too with the gold rush with electric vehicles on the public market is that you're gonna have a bunch of people that invested in Fisker, and now they're gonna buy the car because they invested in the company and whatnot. So that might actually help. I don't know, but I'm staying away from the stock. That's for sure. I'm not touching that, unfortunately. All right, this other big story this week that was interesting is the GM had the opening of the factory zero. It's the opening of the factory, but like it was a big deal. Like Joe Biden was there, but the production hasn't started. They're just doing the pre-production of the Hummer EV right now, so it's not the opening was more like this is like a fully fledged factory now. We're still working to start production, but it's there. So they decided to do an opening, and Joe Biden was there, and he gave a very long speech. Most of it had to do with the infrastructure bill that was just passed on Monday. Was he signed it, made it into law? So he was discussing that a lot. And of course, the infrastructure bill has some electric vehicle aspect. 7.5 billion for charging infrastructure. 7.5 billion for electric buses. So that's the good stuff there. But he discussed also like just generally the EV adoption in the U.S., making the U.S. a leader again in electrification, acknowledging that China has been the leader so far, which I think is a fair point. So things like Factory Zero would help um, U.S. Can we even say regain the lead? That's like, I mean, the lead in manufacturing of EVs. Let's put it like that, because I mean, they never US never had the lead in EV adoption. There's no doubt about that. But in manufacturing, with Tesla early on, I think we had the lead. But now with Tesla also like having their factory in China being their biggest factory at this point, China has obviously taken over. But the part that stuck out for a lot of people, myself included, was his mention of Mary Barra specifically as a leader in electrification, but not only a leader in electrification, as having electrified the entire auto industry. So the exact word here, so I'm not putting words in the mouth of the president, is addressing Mary Barra. You changed the whole story, Mary. Wherever you are, he was looking for her in the crowd. There you are. You did, Mary. You electrified the entire automobile industry. Honestly, at this point, I was thinking he's joking around, but then he followed up with, I'm serious. You led. And it matters in drastically improving the climate by reducing hundreds of millions of barrels of oil that will not be used when we're all electric. Well, that didn't sit right with a lot of people because I think anyone who's following the auto industry's transition to electric transport closely, and obviously at Electrek we are, and if you're listening to that podcast, you probably are too. It's hard to put Mary Barra as a leader in electrification. Actually, it's impossible to do it. She's been CEO of GM for 8 years now. Um, and I got with my article on it, I got accused of being sexist with that. Like, it has nothing to do with Mary Barra's gender. Like, I'm glad that we have a female leader of a major automaker. I'm purely looking at her record on electrification here, and in the last 8 years of being a CEO, there's only one. You can consider it two with the EUV, but the UV has barely launched. It was in production for like 2 weeks, basically, before it got shut down. And also, it's basically the same car as the EV, with just a little bit bigger backseat. There's only one EV that was launched during her reign as CEO, and that's the Bolt EV, which the program started in 2012 before she was ever a CEO. I think she was elected. I don't know, chosen as CEO in 2013, and she started in 2014. So the only thing you can judge her on is future performance of GM here, because of course there was the announcement that they're going all electric by 2035 and everything like that. But saying that she electrified the entire auto industry cannot be more wrong. I think there's just no way to look at it. If you want to give credit, well, first of all, I don't think you can give anyone credit for that because it hasn't happened. Like, it's happening, uh,
Right.
like actively. If you want to give credit to anyone, it has to be Tesla. And if you want to go with the specific person, I do. Even though I have my differences with Elon Musk, I do believe that he is the single person most responsible for helping accelerate electric transport. Of course, it's a team effort at Tesla too, more than anything. But I think it would make a lot more sense, like if he would have said Elon Musk. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people have been saying like, oh, well, this is like a personal attack on Elon Musk and Tesla by the president. Look, the president is a politician first and foremost. He has been a politician for how long? Is it, like 40 years or something? And so,
50.
yeah, if he was at a Ford factory opening for electric cars, he would have said, "Oh, Jim Farley, where you at, Jim? You're there, Jim. Oh, you are responsible for electrifying the auto industry." And Jim would have been, okay, sir," even though Jim has been head of Ford for like less than a year.
Right.
so so like, I wouldn't put too much weight on it. It's just that I want to make it clear, because as someone myself who's extremely passionate about the electrification of the auto industry, I just don't think Mary Barra should be celebrated as an hero of that transition at all. On the contrary, even because she has made some moves that we both know is not positive for electrification.
Right. And I agree with you 100%.
Mhm.
The devil's advocate case is like, well, the Chevy Bolt was in, 2017, the first mass market EV. It kind of slid in before Tesla's Model 3 was released. It had a very low price. Obviously, it was much less than the Model S, which was kind of the big car before that. So there was a moment where the Bolt had just come out and things were looking pretty good for Chevrolet and GM. But like, if anything, the leadership team that Mary Barra oversaw didn't do a really good job with the Bolt. And like the Bolt came out in 2017. People like the satisfaction for Bolt owners like myself, I was one, was kind of off the charts. Like we were like, this is fantastic. There needs to be an all-wheel drive version. There needs to be faster charging. These are all things you can do. You can add all-wheel drive version. You can add faster charging. You can add all the things that people use. They didn't do any of that. Like they had one small pack update. Um,
Purely a cell update, not even
yeah, it
their
was basically LG was like,
company.
hey, we're not making those old cells anymore. You're gonna have to you're gonna have to put
And
more
those
in.
they happen to be defective.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So yeah, GM did it like in 2012 to 2016. Uh, the Bolt team did an amazing job. Obviously, the LG team didn't do as an amazing job with the battery pack, but um, from 2016 to 2020, basically Trump era,
Hmm.
GM's leadership team headed by Barra and Royce as well,
Hmm.
um, pretty much backed off all the EV stuff in the US, and just started up again when Biden got elected.
Yeah,
So
that was my point in the article. Like, if anything, you need to Biden needs to give credit for himself that GM is electrifying their lineup,
right,
because who knows what would have happened if Trump would have won. Um, like maybe they'd still be suing California over the stricter emissions that forces them to produce more EVs. Maybe they wouldn't accelerate their plans with new factories that they announced recently. Like, who knows? It's a strange situation, very strange
yeah,
situation. But of course, like if you want to go find like now the real reason why this is all happening between Biden and GM, it has to do with the UAW, which is very important for both Biden and GM, for Biden and the Democrats in terms of a voting base, and for GM for the worker base. They are intricately linked with the company now. UAW is extremely powerful within GM, and they negotiated themselves a sweet little deal with this new EV incentive that we're going to discuss later on too. If it goes through the Senate now, it has passed the House today or yesterday. But anyway, should we get the quick read on Electrify
yes.
America?
All right. This episode of the Electrek podcast is brought to you by Electrify America. Electrify America now operates the largest coast-to-coast ultra-fast charging network with more than 650 charging stations, and it's growing. It currently has plans underway for around 800 total charging stations, with more than 3,500 chargers to be completed by December of this year. And it plans to have more than 1,800 ultra-fast charging stations and 10,000 individual chargers installed by 2025. That includes 50 kilowatt to 350 kilowatt chargers near highways, 50 kilowatt to 150 kilowatt chargers in metropolitan areas. The newly launched Electrify America mobile apps now offer contactless payment along with CarPlay and Android Auto integration. And you can save up to 25% on charging with the new Pass Plus subscription plans. If you're an EV driver and want to learn more about Electrify America and its growing network of charging stations, find out what they're up to at electrifyamerica.com. That's electrifyamerica.com, or hit up the link in the show notes. Thanks again to Electrify America for sponsoring this week's show. And I should also mention, we had a chance to talk to Giovanni, the CEO of Electrify America, this week. They've got some really cool stuff coming up. I can't remember what's embargoed and what's not embargoed, but they're going to have some destination charge, like big city chargers, so more like gas stations,
Mm-hmm.
in some iconic places, throughout the U.S. And like imagine like an old school gas station in a city, and people pulling up and charging and going away just like a gas station, but more iconic old school than disgusting current gas stations.
There's a lot to be done with the charging experience. Like I think it's just a very interesting market to look into. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, put them in the comment section right now in all caps if possible, so that we know it's a question and not you guys discussing between each other. We're gonna get to them in just a few minutes after we discuss a few more news item that was important this week. So when I get into that, if you do like the podcast, please give us a thumbs up or a like on whatever platform you're listening on. The algorithm loves that stuff, so it helps the show, and it's free to do. You can also give us a subscribe. That's also helpful. If you're listening on an audio app right now, if you can give us a 5-star review, it would be very appreciated. That helps the show a lot. And lately, we've got some attacks from people like pulling up bad reviews, promoting other shows, which I mean, you guys are welcome to listen to anything you want, but come on, like going on other shows to promote in the reviews, that's low, people. So if our fans can get in on that and give us 5-star review, would be super appreciated. All right, let's move into some Tesla news this week, because of course Tesla wasn't at the LA Auto Show. Yeah, they didn't have a booth because the LA Auto Show is one of the rare ones they generally go to, right?
Yeah, they've been at the LA Auto Show before. They weren't this time, but there were some Teslas at the. They had like a contest, an EV thing. One of our friends, Alex Guberman from E for Electric, was the presenter, and Tesla Model Y and Tesla Model 3 won their thing, so that there was actually a display of them there, but
Mm-hmm.
not official Tesla stuff.
Yeah. So if you were listening to the podcast last week, at the very end, we had some kind of like little exclusive information about an important step coming for the Tesla Semi this week. And on Monday, we were able to confirm that it did happen. So the a new Tesla Semi prototype came out to not supercharge, megacharge at the first megacharger station that's been deployed at Gigafactory Nevada, and it coincided the coming out of this new prototype with a visit from PepsiCo executive that came on site to check out the truck and the megacharger. And that comes out right after last week when we reported that the CEO of PepsiCo said that he expects Tesla Semi deliveries by the end of this year, which contradict what Tesla said that customer deliveries would be next year. So we were discussing whether or not he knows something that we don't, or if he's just wrong about that. Because of course deliveries were supposed to start, well, not only this year but the year before that and the one before that too, originally. So the fact that well, not necessarily him himself, but we didn't know exactly which executive, but we know that PepsiCo executive were on site on Monday. And funny enough, too, Carb executive actually came out to check out the mega charger on in the Tesla Semi on the next day, on Tuesday, according to sources that talk to Electrek. So this is interesting because Carb has some significant incentive to electrify trucking in California. So maybe they were trying to like qualify the Tesla Semi or the charger, and they are involved. Also, Carb is also involved in the PepsiCo Modesto facility where Pepsi plans to use these trucks that Tesla is supposedly is going to deliver by the end of this year. We cannot really confirm that they're going to deliver in by the end of the year, other than what the CEO of PepsiCo said. Because like I don't even know, maybe Tesla doesn't even know if they can deliver that by the end of this year. But this new prototype has been produced at the facility in Nevada. It's not at the Gigafactory itself. It's just the building next door. So, all right. Other Tesla news this week. Oh yeah, that was a big one too that I decided to report on Monday, because I think it's a significant issue, and it's a growing one. So in the last few weeks, I've been getting an increasing number of report from Tesla owners that are not related to the full self-driving beta, just regular Tesla Autopilot owners that had issue with phantom braking. Um, and then I had these issue myself with the latest update. I got the 2021.40, and since then I've been getting a ton on phantom braking event, which was always something that I had to deal with. It happens every now and again, but honestly I don't have actual statistic for you from my own experience, but they would happen maybe once every 100 kilometers, something like that. And then right after the update, the first drive I did about 40 kilometers, and I got 6 significant phantom braking events within that, and some that I could actually like see the actual problem with it, which was just passing vehicles on the highway where there's no collision happening at all. Like there's no course to collision, but if you pass a car, for some reason, the autopilot would see that as an issue and would actually put on the brakes quite strongly too, which, as you can imagine, is a safety issue because if you have someone following behind you, you can get rear-ended. So, with my own experience, with the reports that I've been getting from Tesla owners, I'm like, okay, let's see if there's actual like statistic that I can look into that see that there's an increasing problem with the phantom braking. Of course, we know that Tesla pulled 2 updates ago the FSD beta update because of phantom braking issues in the FSD, and but for regular autopilot owners, I ended up looking at the NHTSA complaints for specific Tesla vehicles, and I saw a massive increase in the last few weeks of those complaints relating to phantom braking events. So I think there's a clear issue happening right now with Tesla vehicle and phantom braking. So something to keep in mind if you're using the autopilot. I've seen a bunch of people, like especially since I wrote this article, a bunch of other people reached out, and some of them started like giving me uh, advice on like, oh, just keep your foot on the accelerator pedal. It negates any phantom braking. Yeah, but it also negates any actual needs for braking because it tells you if you put your foot on the accelerator pedal while using traffic aware cruise control, it tells you it won't brake if you have to. So then it's not traffic aware cruise control anymore. It's just cruise control, and also it negates the use of cruise control, which you're not supposed to have your foot on the accelerator. So it's completely useless in my opinion. At this point, just don't use traffic aware cruise control. So I don't know. Have you had any experience with that, sir?
Oh, I've had quite the experience with phantom
Mhm.
braking.
Yeah.
So we go to Vermont every weekend in the winter time, and there's this place on the Taconic Freeway that the Taconic's kind of a parkway. It's not really an interstate, but there's some parts of it where you can kind of put on regular um, autopilot, and
Hmm.
it takes a little bit of a load off. But there's this one bridge that we go over, and for some reason, the thing freaks out and like almost screeches the wheels. And we know about it, and like now, we say, "All right, turn off the autopilot. We're about to hit this spot where it
Hmm.
freezes." So it's a reproducible, like it happens quite a bit. You would think like Tesla would get the warnings and say, "Oh, look, there's nothing in front of them." But so I think it's really reduced our confidence in autopilot, generally speaking. I know my wife is always like, turn it off whenever I put it on. So I know FSD is going to be even a harder sell if and when I ever see it. Um, so yeah, it's something Tesla needs to work on. It's a real confidence reducer
Hmm.
and something that doesn't help the company at all.
But have you seen an increase in the number of phantom braking events that you get since
No,
the?
I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't been driving on freeways that much for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Haven't been, and my wife doesn't let me use
Mhm.
autopilot while she's in the car or the kids in the car anymore. So, uh, yeah, it's just not. I'm not getting the mileage out of autopilot that I usually do.
Yeah. I'm using this as a warning because I know a lot of our listeners are Tesla owners just to be careful with it. Especially with when you're on the highway. Like I had this happen 2 or 3 times in the last week or so, where when you're on the right lane on the highway and you're coming up on a ramp, and you see someone coming up on the ramp that's gonna come on the highway around the same time that you're gonna pass it, so you preemptively move to the left lane to give them room to pass. So I'm on autopilot, and I do that with the auto lane change feature. Move to the left. So I think that way autopilot won't have to slow down for that car or to accelerate or whatever. Like this is gonna be safe. And then sure enough, that car pulls up to me on the right, which just when I pass it, but on the right lane, and I'm on the left lane, so I'm completely in the clear. And the car slams on the brake right when I
Hmm.
pass it. It's a scary experience, and fortunately, it happened 2 times last week. and both times there was no one behind me. But if there was someone behind me, they for sure would have rear-ended me.
Yeah.
We would love to reach out to Tesla about this story and ask them what's going on, but we cannot do that. The only way to reach out to Tesla is through Elon Musk, and we're blocked from Elon Musk because we write stories like that sometimes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Model S and X deliveries have slipped now all the way to 2023. That's for the cheapest version of of the vehicles. Like that's how long the delivery timelines are right now for these vehicles. Even though production is apparently ramping up, especially for Model X that just started a few months ago. So the long range version of the Model S and X, you have to be. We get a ton of tips. We appreciate the tips from people. Like those keep them coming are nice. But we get a lot of tips right now because people are not aware of that Tesla modified their configurators, and they push you to the bigger wheels first. Now they want you to buy the bigger wheels, so the default configuration is with the bigger wheels. So it's we often get, hey, look at the configurator. Tesla increased the price, or Tesla reduced the range, or whatever. But always look at the wheels because Tesla pushed the bigger ones automatically. But so if you choose the base version with the standard wheels, no new paint, no new accessories, anything like that, you get a March 2023 for the long range Model S and long range Model X. So that's over a year, almost a year and a half of the of wait time. It gets a little bit faster if you choose the bigger wheel option. You get November 2022, but that's still a full year of wait. And if you go with the plaid version, that goes faster. Not for the Model X though. Model X is still. I don't even know if Tesla delivered any plaid Model X yet. August 2022. And for the Model S though, it's December. Like you could technically get it like next month if you choose a plaid, but that's a $130,000 car.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like they're prioritizing plaid. Like,
Yeah.
there's probably a lot more profit margin there.
Yeah, and
And
people have been saying that, oh, it's the wheels, the actual wheels are doing the difference. It's not because Tesla wants to push more expensive wheels; is that they don't have access to smaller wheels. But that's not true because if you go with the Plaid, you can even choose a smaller wheel that you can have base standard on the Model S long range, and you still get the December delivery timeline. So it's not the wheels. It's Tesla is trying to. Tesla has a ton of diamond for the car, and they're trying to push you to the more expensive versions of it. That's it, which is fair, of course. Like they want to make money out of it, but yeah, and of course this is for new orders. So if you already have a car on order, hopefully you can get it sooner. But market is wild right now for electric vehicles. It's booming.
do you think Tesla would? I mean, so okay, for instance, if Austin opens soon and can take some of the Model Y and Model 3 demand off the, I mean, that's off the charts as well.
Mhm.
But do you think Tesla could ramp up Model S and X production in Fremont if some of the Model 3 and Y is pushed over to Texas?
Well, at the shareholder meeting recently, Elon did say that they're gonna increase production in Fremont, but I think he was specifically talking about Model 3, Model Y too, right? I don't think. Well, I mean, the Model S and X ramp up was always just production started in June, so there's still a ramp up going on. Uh, but no, I don't know. I think it's very different cars there. Like the Model S and X production line are notoriously more like labor heavy than the Model 3, Model Y. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's that possible. And I haven't been in Fremont for a long time, but I don't even know how they can increase Model 3, Model Y production there.
Right.
That thing is packed.
Back to the gills.
Yeah. All right. A milestone for the Powerwall this week: 250,000 deliveries. This installation that Tesla announced. So Tesla has been keeping us updated on that number because the only other number that they release is through their quarterly findings, and that's the total of energy storage deployed, and that includes the Powerwall, the Power Pack, and the Mega Pack. So we never really know the Powerwalls on that, but that's the third update in a row for our actual like milestone of installation that Tesla released for the Powerwall. So we can get an idea of the installation rate that Tesla is achieving with it, because we know that they have a big backlog of order on those. In May 2020, they announced they reached 100,000. In May 2021, they announced 200,000. So that gave us an annual rate of 100,000 per year. And now on November 2021, they announced 250,000, which is roughly 6 months too. So they are still basically at a rate of 100,000 per year. So no acceleration during the last 6 months. Um, you can see this is the new Powerwall Plus with the inverter on top here. Um, that's the latest version being produced. Tesla has been talking about ramping up production for that, but that's dependent on battery cell supply. And Tesla always says that they're going to prioritize vehicle production, the cell supply there. So we might be a little bit far off until we see a ramp up there, but I think Tesla has demand for 250,000 power walls per year if they could produce it. All right, so let's give a quick update on the EV incentive, because this is a big part of the story right now. We discussed last week like how it affects sales for especially for cars like GM and Tesla that don't have access to it right now. Like the actual um, implementation of the new incentive is important because it's going to give access to a lot of money to those people. But when can they take delivery? Is there a retrofit, a retroactive aspect to it, and all that stuff? So, um, right now, the progress on the EV incentives this week, the infrastructure bill became law, so that unlocks the $7.5 billion for charging infrastructure and for electric buses. So that's done. Now it's not a direct incentive to consumers. It's implemented differently, so people have to apply for it, and the companies that build those vehicles that deploy those chargers. So this is not really something that affects consumers directly. Over time, it's going to be good for consumers, though. Good for investors too. There's definitely companies that you can invest in that would benefit from that money. Also, like basically any charging infrastructure company in the U.S., bus companies, electric bus makers, and so forth. But for consumers, the bigger bill here is the Build Back Better Act. That's what we're keeping an eye on. And today it passed the House. So that's a big step, an important step. But now it means that it moves to the Senate. And the Senate was already working on a different version of the bill. So we might see some changes by the time it passed from the Senate. And I've seen the big questions, of course, what's the timeline? What's the timeline? What's the timeline? And I've seen a bunch of different timelines. Some people think that's how it's going to be done in a few weeks. Some people think it's still a few months of negotiation before it can pass the Senate and get to President Biden's desk for signing into law. So we're not anywhere near a final version yet. But as of now, the version that passed the House was the same one that we discussed a few weeks back. Is the one that's $7,500 over 10 years. So removing the 200,000 delivery cap, then you have 500 more for a U.S. made battery pack, and then you have the 4,500 more for an electric vehicle coming out of a union factory, a factory where the natural phrasing is a factory where the workers have a collective bargaining deal with the automaker. Then you have some limitation in terms of the prices of the vehicles, but they are extremely where are they? They are extremely generous. 80,000 for vans, SUVs, and trucks. 55,000 for sedans. Like it's not gonna be a big hurdle. There's a cap for the incomes though. So gross incomes $250,000 or less for individual, 500,000 for joint filers. That might be something that get changed in the Senate because that has been described as like a tax credit for the rich. Speaking of the tax credit versus direct incentive at the purchase, um, at the what you call it, the point of sale incentive. Uh, the way that the bill is set up, uh, it would become a point of sale. At least it can be used as a point of sale incentive. But starting in 2023, the way the bill is set up right now, there's no retroactivity of the incentive. It would start on December after December 31st, 2021. So for every electric vehicle delivered in 2022, and for every electric vehicle delivered in 2022, it would be a tax credit. So on your taxes that you're going to pay in 2023, you would get a tax credit. And then starting in 2023, there's language in the bill that make it sound like it could become a point of sale. So that's where we're at. But now with the Senate, and what's the dude's name that has been making
Manchin.
trouble? Manchin.
Hate that
Manchin,
guy.
yeah, has made it clear that he doesn't like the union aspect to it, which he's not alone. That's actually something that I agree with him. That it just doesn't make sense, and it's not about being pro union or not. It's not even about that for him. It's about that for sure. It
For him,
sounds
it's
like
about he's always in the wrong area. He's always in the wrong,
yeah, but actually in
even
this
when
case,
he's right.
oh yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a fair point here. Um, so the way to look at it, I think, is like, okay, forget about Tesla, forget about Toyota, and all the people that are arguing against it. Let's just take automaker A, automaker B. Okay, let's say that automaker B happens to have a factory producing electric vehicles that with a union workers are unionized. Factory A, okay, doesn't have a union workforce, but employees in the company A vote to unionize, and the vote doesn't pass. Most people are actually happy with the working condition, and they don't want to pay union dues, and they don't think they're gonna get value out of that, and they decide not to pass it. So, assuming, of course, there can be external factors like shenanigans and to play with the vote, but assuming there's none of that, assuming that everything is fair play, they vote against it. Now, buyers of vehicles coming out of that factory are penalized because the workers there don't want to be unionized. It makes no sense whatsoever. So you cannot have that as a condition for getting more money of tax credit. It makes no sense. Um, it's purely political at this point, and it's purely a bonus for UAW for voting Democrats at this point. Uh,
I agree with you. I hadn't really thought of that particular line of thinking, but
mm,
when you put it that way, it makes it all the more. It makes it
mm.
almost like you should give more to non-union shops, right? Because
I
like, hey, the workers were like, hey, we don't really need a union to
Yeah.
deal with our employer.
Yeah, it's wild. Of course, like that's why I use company A, company B, because like you have to assume that there's no shenanigans going on. Because if you use Tesla for an example, and Tesla make it sound like, no, our employee doesn't want to unionize, they are stockholders and everything, so like we treat them fairly. But then there's this accusation from the what's the board of workers in California? I don't remember the name, but they were accused in court that to curtail unionization effort illegally, and things like that. So of course, if you take that into account, like it it makes the water murkier. But assuming that that's the case, and it's completely reasonable to imagine factories of workers that don't want to unionize, and they're happy with their working condition. Like it's completely possible. It exists in the world. But Toyota claims the same thing. Toyota does not, like, of course, they're not producing electric vehicles, but and I haven't heard much from unionization effort from Toyota workers in the US, right? There probably
But
was, but
yeah, I mean, all of the kind of foreign companies who come here because they don't want to deal with unions. Like
mm,
obviously, all the German companies have their own unions.
yeah.
So, and then I think there's also in Japan, there's also
Mm.
auto unions are pretty strong.
All right, should we jump into the comment section?
Yep, let's do that now. Luke Miller, Seth, you met up with Kyle from Out of Spec Videos and Inside EVs. Can you guys do a podcast together one time. I think they invite. So there's obviously a lot of other auto journalists here. They invited us to go on their podcast a few times. I think we were actually like callers at one point, or they called it whatever.
Oh no, they were
I
discussing
would
one of my articles at one point, so I jumped into the comment section, but I wasn't really on the podcast or anything like that.
right. So I think we'd love to go on theirs. They can come on ours. We'll work that out.
Mm.
I know we'd love to have Tom Malogny on. He's been a good friend for a while, as well as
Yeah,
Kyle.
Tom knows his EVs.
Yep, it's charging for sure.
Yeah, it's charging too.
All right, scrolling down a little bit. Todos Electronico says, how can the Fisker Ocean reach a price point below the SR Plus with similar range and an SUV form factor?
That's a fair question.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think there's some subsidization going on. Subsidization.
I mean, the Tesla is no like because Tesla cannot do it doesn't mean other people can't either. But it's safer to assume that other people can because Tesla has a lot of experience producing EVs in mass volume compared to any other company, especially Fisker and even Magna, really. So yeah, I mean it's a fair point. That's what we've been discussing, really.
All right. Any news, speaking of Fisker, any news on Fisker in Europe?
I mean, the car is going to be produced in Europe, so it makes sense for them to deliver them too. But again, Fisker like the subcontracted the production of it, so they're going to own the like service experience and selling experience. So like that's what you've been if you're invested into the Fisker story, you need to look out for that them deploying that because. It's the same thing with any other automaker that doesn't use the dealership models like Tesla. Tesla doesn't I mean, there is some Teslas in market where Tesla doesn't have a service and charging infrastructure, but it's not a good experience for the well. It's manageable. There some people do it. Some hardcore fans they import their own cars and everything, but it's hard.
All right, here's an interesting question from Facebook. Morgan Sauerbrunn asks, is there anything that can be done to make EVs more appealing, better marketed towards women, buyers, drivers? And she knows that she's not, she's asking two guys, so we don't really have any firsthand experience. I was actually talking to Electrify America leadership, and one of the things they did allow us to talk about is that they're putting solar canopies over some of their charging stations. Although, the very small solar canopies that aren't going to account for, direct charging. But one of the things that it does do is it lights up the charging area a little better, which makes it safer for everyone, including women who might, worry about,
being approached at the charging station.
Weirdos or whatever.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing. Getting better lighting at Tesla superchargers would be a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much
multiple
you can
cameras.
do really for women. I mean, I know that there's a lot of data and like what kind of cars women versus men buy. So as more EVs become available throughout all segments of the industry, there's going to be more options that are historically more attractive to women. But of course, like that, there's a wide spectrum of that. Like there's some women that like muscle cars, other like the classic was like a women or big SUV buyers, like safety. They're big and safe. They're useful, but I mean, then there's I don't think that's the difference between an electric vehicles and gasoline ones. Like form factors are going to be very similar at the end. It's just a powertrain experience. One thing that I've heard a lot though is if we go back to the charging experience, cable management. Some of the cables are hard to manipulate at times, and smaller people, which often are women, fall in that category. Sometimes it's harder to literally manipulate the cable that are thick, like liquid cool and everything. They're hard to do, especially in the winter when things get cold. So having in French they say suspendu when it's over the cable falls down from over the top of the charging station, so that it's easier to manipulate. You don't have to basically lift it up to get it to the charger. A lot of the stations are coming out like that. and that's helpful, I think, for, well, again, not just for women, like you said. It's like the lights, it's helpful for everyone,
Yeah.
um, but in terms of the buying, because he says buying and driving, I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
mean, outside of Tesla, going to a car dealer isn't fun for anybody, male or female. But maybe it just seems like it's kind of a boys' club sometimes when you go to like a. I don't want to keep putting down Chevy, but like when I bought my Bolt, I don't think there was one woman there.
And they say like,
So
so talk to your husband about it and come back, and we'll sign the paper. Like
yeah,
the
that kind of thing.
classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's just it's crappy, and I know, like, Volvo has, like, advertising for the XC40 that's pink. I don't think that's going to help any woman. Like that's not what women want. I know that much. I don't know much else, but so yeah, I would love to hear uh, other people. I mean, I've seen a ton of women driving Teslas, and I know the VW ID4 is very popular as well.
mhm.
So I would love to hear more about what people think. All right, moving on. Roll of 20 says if they can't solve phantom braking for autopilot, then FSD level 4 or 5 is still years and years away, maybe a decade.
Yeah, well, on that front, I mean, that's a fair point to a degree, but my concern was more. This is like, and it's not a new problem. There's always been a degree of phantom braking, but this seems to get worse, especially if we look at the reports. And some people have associated it with the change to vision based, but my car is not vision based. It's just or unless they pushed it in the last update without telling us. Um, so it could be something that can be literally revert. If I just go back to the last update, I shouldn't get as much of an issue with it. So uh, I don't see that as a big hurdle for FSD, but not that I'm confident that FSD is anywhere near close to happen. I mean, through FSD, I mean,
All right. So,
whatever.
yeah,
Full self-driving, through self-driving, like the way we talk about that stuff is so complicated these days. Like,
yeah.
self-driving is self-driving. Whatever beta Tesla has right now is fun, it's impressive, but it's not self-driving.
All right. One last defense of my comment on Joe Manchin being wrong, even when he's right. It's a silly thing to say. What I mean is that, more like a broken clock is right
uh,
twice a year or some other thing.
I think you
But
mean
it's
right, but for the wrong reasons.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So let me go back up to Greg. I think his question was skipped, or I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I
Maybe
think
it didn't come through.
it didn't come true. So Greg, unless you're quick to post it real quick, well, but we have another one.
Oh, Sono Motors.
Ooh.
Yeah, Eli Deschamps says if Fisker's not a good company to invest in, what about Sono Motors? We had a really lovely group of
Meeting with
people at
them.
Sono take us around on the car. The car didn't really inspire a ton of confidence for us um, in our particular drive. I don't. Can you say?
Yeah, I mean, they look like good people, smart people. So that's the main thing. You When you want to invest in a company, you want good leadership, and I think they have that. Um, I don't see their car happening in any form that's gonna be successful right now. I think there's value in the company though as a third party installer of or supplier of solar system and inverter for moving vehicles. I think that's an interesting thing that can happen. And I know they have third party deals with trailer companies, trucks. And I think that's a big market that there's value in it. But I haven't looked in the details of the financial of Sono Motors. I know they had a big day, big opening this week on the stock market. Like they went up like 200% or whatever. So I don't know if it's worth investing at this point, but my 2 cents would be if you think about investing in the company, um, put a don't put a big premium on their car business, but look at their what do you call that? Like a supplier, basically, as a supplier of solar system for electric vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised. I think the market cap for them is now 4 billion, which
Yeah, that seems high to
pretty
me.
early for that kind of.
Yeah.
All right,
All
that's
right.
it.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. Thanks a lot for watching on your YouTube and everything. Give us a thumbs up if you can. That's good for the algorithm. Algorithm. That's a hard word to say for me. And yeah, thanks a lot for Electrify America for sponsoring the show this week. And we're gonna see you same time, same place next week.